I've watched hundreds of people fail the Alabama concealed handgun license test, and it almost always comes down to the same handful of things. Today, I'm walking you through them. We're going to peel back the layers on the Castle Doctrine, the messy reality of permitless carry, and how to handle a traffic stop without ending up in handcuffs. This isn't just about passing, it's about keeping your freedom. Stick with me. Between you and me, most people treat this test like a formality. That's their first mistake. The laws in Alabama changed recently, and if you're relying on old school advice, you're already behind. Let's fix that. Stay with me here, because the biggest trap in Alabama right now is thinking that permitless carries means no rules carries. It's actually the opposite. Right, quick note. Think of permitless carry, like driving on a learner's permit versus having a full commercial license. Sure, you can drive, but the restrictions are tighter. In Alabama, even though we have constitutional carry, having that physical permit is like a VIP pass for reciprocity. If you cross into a state that doesn't recognize permitless carry, you're suddenly a felon. What I see students do is assume the Alabama law follows them across the state line into Georgia or Florida. It doesn't. Why do people get this wrong? Because the news makes it sound like the permit is obsolete. Actually, the permit is your legal insurance policy. Imagine you have a gym membership that only works at one specific branch unless you pay for the gold tier. Reciprocity is that gold tier. Alabama has agreements with many states, but those agreements are often based on the permit, not just the fact that you're a resident. While we're on this, quick context, reciprocity changes constantly as state legislatures meet, so what was true last summer might not be true today. The thing nobody tells you is that a non-resident permit from another state might be your best friend if you travel a lot. If you get this nuance, you're in better shape than you think. Think of a no smoking sign in a hospital. Even if smoking is legal everywhere else, that specific zone is a hard no. Alabama law is very specific about courthouses, jails, and psychiatric facilities. The test loves to ask about posted signs on private property. Here's the thing, in Alabama, if a private business has a sign, they can ask you to leave. If you don't, it's criminal trespass. People get tempted to argue their Second Amendment rights to a manager, but that's a losing battle on the exam and in real life. Is it a gun-free zone if there isn't a guard? Legally, if it's a government building with restricted access, yes. Now here's the thing about defending your home. It's not like the movies, and Alabama's Castle Doctrine has very specific moats you need to understand. Okay? Think of your home like a medieval castle. If someone is trying to break through the gate, the law presumes you have a reasonable fear of death. You don't have to wait for them to point a gun at you if they're forcefully entering your occupied home. Where students mess up is thinking this applies to the yard or the sidewalk. It doesn't. It's about the dwelling, right? Quick reset. The law uses the word occupied. If you come home and see someone running out of your empty house with your TV, the Castle Doctrine doesn't give you a green light to use deadly force. Use the mnemonic CASH coming at someone's house. Here's the exam day version. This is like being in a checkout line and someone tries to shove you out of the way. You don't have to run to the back of the store. In Alabama, if you're in a place you have a legal right to be and you aren't doing anything illegal, you don't have to retreat before using force. But here's the insider catch. Just because you can stand your ground doesn't mean it's the smartest move for a jury. What I see students do is forget the innocent party rule. If you started the fight, you can't claim stand your ground. You have to be the one who didn't provoke the incident. Think of this like a fire extinguisher. You only use it when there's an actual fire that's about to consume something important. You don't use it for a candle. Alabama law requires an immediate threat of deadly physical force or a few specific felonies like kidnapping or rape. A lot of people fail this section because they think he looked like he had a knife is enough. The law looks for ability, opportunity, and jeopardy. If the guy with the knife is 50 feet away behind a fence, there's no jeopardy. It's a high bar, and the exam will test if you know exactly where that bar sits. Okay, let's talk about the side of the law that actually interacts with you on the road. This is where most permits get revoked, not because of a crime, but because of a misunderstanding. Questioned. Imagine you're walking into a surprise party. You know something the guest of honor doesn't. In a traffic stop, the officer is the guest of honor, and the surprise is your firearm. Now, Alabama is technically not a must-inform state unless the officer asks you, but here's the secret. If you have a permit, it's already linked to your license plate in their system. If you wait for them to ask, the tension is already high. What I tell people is to keep your hands on the wheel and be boring. If they ask, do you have any weapons? That's your legal moment of truth. If you lie there, you're done. Let me put it another way. Think of your car like an extension of your holster. Under the new laws, if you're 21 and not prohibited, you can have that handgun in the car. But wait, if you don't have a permit, there are still weird gray areas about concealed on your person while in the vehicle. The thing nobody tells you is that if you're traveling through a school zone, federal law, the Gun-Free School Zones Act, technically requires a state-issued permit to carry within 1,000 feet of a school. Alabama's permitless carry doesn't exempt you from that federal rule. That's a massive trap that catches people who think they don't need the paperwork anymore. Okay? It's like being at the doctor. You want to be clear, concise, and not hide the symptoms. If an officer secures your weapon during a stop, don't take it personally. They're managing their safety. The exam might ask about disarming during an investigation. Yes, an officer can temporarily take your firearm for safety reasons during a lawful stop. Don't reach for it to show them. That's the fastest way to a very bad day. If you can stay calm during this explanation, you're more prepared than 90% of the people taking this test. Right, quick reset. We need to look at the what-ifs, the situations that aren't black and white, but will definitely be on your exam. Let me put it another way. This is exactly like a designated driver. You can't be the driver if you've been drinking. In Alabama, carrying while intoxicated is a recipe for losing your rights forever. The insider tip here is that there's no magic numbers like 0.08 for carrying. If your physical or mental faculties are impaired, you're in the wrong. I see people think they can have just one at a restaurant. If something happens and you have to use that firearm, even one beer makes you look like the villain to a jury. The exam wants to know if you understand that impairment equals no carry. Here's the exam day version. Think of a dog barking versus a dog biting. In Alabama, just showing your gun to scare someone can be considered menacing. It's a Class B misdemeanor. People think, I'll just flash the grip to make him back off. That's a crime if you aren't in a situation that justifies deadly force. If you pull it, you'd better be prepared to use it because the law sees brandishing as an escalation, not a de-escalation. The test will try to trick you with a scenario where someone is just being annoying or rude. Never pull your weapon for rude. Now, here's the thing. Imagine a list of break glass in case of emergency situations. Alabama defines specific crimes where you can use force to stop them. This includes murder, assault in the first or second degree, burglary, and robbery. But here's the detour. While we're on this, notice that theft isn't on that list. If someone steals your bicycle off the porch and runs away, you can't shoot them. Property isn't worth a life in the eyes of the Alabama court system. If you got that distinction, you're in better shape than you think. Now, this next part matters. Finally, let's talk about the stuff that happens after the test. The maintenance of your legal status in Alabama. Think of this like your car's tag. If it's expired, it doesn't matter how good a driver you're. Alabama permits can be issued for 1 year or 5 years. If you move, you need to update your address with the sheriff's office. A lot of people forget this and then wonder why they get a hard time during a background check for their next purchase. The insider's secret is that the sheriff has the discretion to revoke that permit if you become a danger to yourself or others, even without a new conviction. It's a privilege held by the county, so stay on their good side. Right, quick note, this is like keeping your cleaning chemicals in a locked cabinet away from the kids. It's common sense, but the law looks at it as negligence. If your firearm is stolen because you left it on the dash of an unlocked car, you might not go to jail, but you're opening yourself up to a massive civil lawsuit. Alabama doesn't have a specific safe storage law that mandates a safe, but they do have reckless endangerments. If a child gets a hold of your gun because you were careless, that's where the hammer drops. The exam will ask about your responsibility as an owner. It's 24 or 7. Okay, try. Think of this like house rules is versus HOA rules. Your parents might say you can stay up late, but the HOA says no loud music after 10. Alabama might be okay with certain things, but federal law ATF always looms over. For example, medical marijuana is a huge trap. Even if a state makes it legal, the federal government says marijuana users are prohibited persons for firearms. If you have a medical card in some states, you can't buy a gun. Always remember, the more restrictive law usually wins in court. Don't let a state freedom blind you to a federal felony. We've covered the hidden traps of permitless carry, the moats of the castle doctrine, and why brandishing is a one-way ticket to a courtroom. Remember, the Alabama CHL test isn't just about knowing which end the bullet comes out of, it's about the why and when of the law. If you can navigate these gray areas we talked about today, you're miles ahead of the average applicant. So here's your move tonight. Block 30 minutes, pull up CCWExam.com and run a free practice test on the Alabama Concealed Handgun License Test. That single habit is what separates the people who pass from the people who keep rescheduling. If this video helped, hit like and subscribe. Go get that permit and stay safe out there.